And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you for joining me again today. So to start off, we'll be talking about Microsoft. Now, many businesses have already resumed getting their employees back, going back to their regular offices and so forth. And for some, it's good news, and for some, they're still apprehensive going back to work in terms of safety with the pandemic still going on and everything. One such company is giving their employees an alternative. In this particular case, it's Microsoft, wherein they're letting their employees work from home permanently until further notice. So let's take a look here. So it's great news if you're working for Microsoft, right? Let's see here. So as mentioned here, so Microsoft will be also allowed to relocate, not just working from home, but as much as go back to your provincial area, or even migrate back to the country where you grew up with. So they're calling this a hybrid workplace in a sense. So meaning offering greater flexibility once US offices eventually reopen. So Microsoft has provided internal guidance. It outlines how the company's flexible working plans would be implemented. Now, obviously, many employees would tremendously benefit, would be grateful in terms of appreciating what the company is thinking of. It's not just the bottom line of the business that they're concerned with, also the safety and welfare of their valuable employees here. And as mentioned here, they are allowing their employees to work from home as much as less than 50% of their working week. So hopefully it will provide a less strenuous workload compared to on a regular work week on an office setup. Also, they can also approve, or managers can approve permanent remote work, pending approval. So again, employees are given an option to whether what type of flexibility type of work would they prefer. And as mentioned here, according to the Microsoft Chief People Officer, Kathleen Hogan, which states, we will offer as much flexibility as possible to support individual work styles while balancing business needs and ensuring we live our culture. Kudos for them for implementing such strategy. Now, obviously, not everyone will be able to take advantage of these plans. So in particular, employees that has to still go to their respective offices, whether having to have access to hardware laboratories, data centers, and in-person training. So it all depends on what type of nature of work that you do for a particular company. But for the vast majority who's based on working in a regular desk job, I think that's something you could do remotely. So apart from that, they also mentioned that you can move across country. So it was mentioned earlier for remote work, which is a big deal, right? Now, obviously, compensation and benefits will change and vary depending on the company's own GeoPay. Let's say if you're based in United States and then you plan to go back, let's say somewhere in either in Europe or in Asia, obviously the pay scale would be slightly different than what you're accustomed if you were to be based in the United States. Now, one good thing about this is Microsoft will be covering home office expenses for permanent remote workers. But they also stated that Microsoft will not cover the relocation expenses. So it would be up to the employees to shoulder that. But I think that's a small price to pay if you do plan to relocate across borders or across country permanently. But I think it would be a case-to-case basis, because what if in the future or sometime next year, businesses or offices will be able to resume their normal operations. What does this mean for those people who have already relocated? So something to consider if you're one of the employees working for Microsoft. Now, it was mentioned that their US offices would not be reopened until as early as early or late January 2021 at the earliest. Now, according to Microsoft, they're not the only company that is implementing a permanently work remote concept. Facebook is also implementing such remote work, wherein the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, revealed that up to half of employees could work remotely within 5 to 10 years. So meaning there could be a permanent shift in terms of how people perceive workspace, where do they work. It's not just a typical office-based desk job anymore that you could work remotely, and it has its advantages and disadvantages here. Now, what would benefit one employee? Could the company benefit from it? Obviously working from home is more or less stressful in a sense, but obviously working with a group of people would limit your interactions with one another, I think, which is the whole point of working in an organization, to have a cohesive unit here. So we have to wait and see how this pans out, and will other companies implement this remote work from home, not just on a short-term basis, but in a long-term basis as well. Anyway, so apart from businesses that were working, remotely working, businesses have slowly reopened to help, the crisis that we are in right now. If business can stay afloat, remain in business, survive this crucial period. And one of the industries that are heavily affected are not just in the travel industry or the airline industry, as well as the hospitality, as well as the entertainment industry. Now, I think we discussed this last week about, in particular, in the movie chains, in particular, Cinema World was forced or have decided to shut down majority of all of their theaters because of the pandemic. And even if they open their theaters, question is, will people be going out to watch movies? And question is, what movies can they watch? And with the latest news that some of the blockbuster films are being pushed as far as later this year, and even for some moving pushed back as early next year or later next year. So it has a domino effect on how the movie theaters would perform in terms of generating revenue. But in this article, in this case, AMC is doing the complete opposite. They'll continue to remain open with one key advantage here. So let's take a look. So as mentioned, the AMC movie theater is keeping their movie theaters open, and they say it's the right decision even as other rivals such as Regal, who owns Cinema World, closed their cinemas. Now, as mentioned, is it the right decision? Yes. And it is because of their partnership with a particular movie outfit. In this case, it's their on-demand agreement with Universal Pictures. So what does this mean? So they'll be guaranteed that they'll show the films, and then later on they will be able to generate revenue, not just get a cut from theatrical revenue here, but as well as home revenue here. So it's a win-win scenario for both parties here. So obviously they're expecting that people will come out and watch films, whatever Universal releases later this year, and people will go out and see the films. And after that, if they don't watch, or if it's a box office hit and so forth, they can still watch those films later on in their respective streaming services and so forth. So it's a win-win scenario. Obviously, it's a big advantage for AMC since their main competitor has already closed their theater. So obviously, if you're a moviegoer, where do you go watch a film? If you're limited with just one option, then good for them. It's more revenue than they would expect. And as mentioned here, the CEO Adam Aaron defended the company's decision to continue operating its movie theaters during the pandemic, even if the top rivals chose to temporarily close its screen. And as I mentioned, they mentioned they have millions of people who come to theaters to watch films, right, for entertainment, especially for being locked down for so long, for several months. Obviously, people are clamoring to do some activities outside of their homes, but obviously the concern here is it's safe. Now, obviously, movie theaters have already tried as much as they can to make ensure provide protocols to ensure that the safety of the individuals or the moviegoers are at the top of their priority. And as mentioned here, their position to keep the theaters open is because, as mentioned, so the agreement between Universal Films to show their films in AMC theater and then before moving on to on-demand streaming. Now, the agreement here has been slightly changed dramatically, as mentioned. So instead of a typical 3 months movie showing in the movie theaters, will be now reduced to just about how many days? Yeah, less than half of a month. Now, obviously, that's a big change, so that they could take advantage of the hype of, let's say, if it generates positive reviews, so people who are not able to go out and watch the films on the theaters, they could watch it on different respective streaming services, as mentioned. So it's a win-win for both of them, but obviously, AMC needs to generate more hype so people can have a reason to go out and watch different films. Now, I think as mentioned, the film, what was it? Yeah, the latest James Bond flick was pushed later this year. Even the film of Wonder Woman 1984, I think was supposed to be later released, was already pushed back late December this year. So what other films would be affected? We have to wait and see. So again, the key problem of many cinemas, why they have, they're losing revenue here is because of lack of blockbuster movies that are being shown in the theaters. Now, obviously, why are movie outfits afraid to release films or show it to the theaters is obviously, it's not the same as if you compare it to simply last year. If it were just a normal day, people would go out see, even if it's a blockbuster film or known film or an unknown film. People, look for entertainment, and movie is one way of doing that. So, but with the pandemic and everything, people are even more cautious as to when to go out. Now, obviously, some are already started to go out, do their own activity. But in terms of leisure, in particular, watching films, it's a totally different endeavor because you have to be congregated in a very close quarters in a sense. So, are you comfortable sitting in close proximity to other people where you might get infected and so forth? So, it's a big risk. So, how can this be alleviated unless they can guarantee that people won't get infected and such? I think that's the trade-off that people are waiting to see. How far before people starting going back? Is it in weeks' time, months, or even years? So we'll see what happens there. And obviously, a lot of films are being released, so something to look forward. It's a kids' film, I think. It's called The Croods, so it's a sequel to the original Croods movie. It's now called The Croods: A New Age. So something to look forward here. Obviously, safety protocols is at the top of AMC's priority here. So making sure social distancing and enhanced cleaning of the facility is their priority here. Well, good luck to them. Hopefully, other movie theaters can resume their operation and get moviegoers watching the films again. Anyway, so continuing here, we have speaking of recently this week there was a big event in the United States. They call it Amazon's Prime Day. So they provide big discounts, so you can purchase online, obviously through their website, and it's a big boost regardless of the situation. And this has been happening for several years already. And obviously, Amazon is at the top of in terms of e-commerce platform. What happens here is obviously other retailers, big retailers such as Walmart and Target, also see this as an opportunity to maybe compete with the likes of Amazon here. How do they compete? Well, based on the article here, So the big box retailers, like I mentioned, Walmart and Target, is trying to beat Amazon on speed by focusing on curbside pickup. Okay. Now, obviously, when you purchase online, typically whether through Lazada, Shopee, or in this case Amazon, you purchase online and gets delivered to your doorsteps, no matter how many days. Is it a day, a week, and so forth, right? Now, the big retailers here is offering a different scenario here. Now, you order it online and then you go pick it up at their store. So it's called curbside pickup. Now, obviously, the one main advantage here is obviously you get to dictate when you want to pick up the purchase. Typically, if it's, especially for Shopee and Lazada here, they say it may take a few days to a week or even a month. So it's out of your control in terms of the logistics aspects. But for the curbside pickup, it's on the customer's responsibility on when they want to get the product. So as long as it's available in the stores, then they order it, they pay for it, then they just have to pick it up. So no need to go to the stores and view the different products. It's more convenient in a sense here. And will it be an effective strategy long-term wise? We will see. We have to wait and see, right? So as mentioned here, so Walmart and Target, even Best Buy is trying to divert dollars on Amazon's Prime Day here. So by fulfilling orders quickly through curbside pickup and in-store pickup here. So it's a very good strategy that I think many businesses should implement, especially if you have an online business. So it's not just delivering the products to your customers at their doorstep, but it's also considering, would they prefer to pick it up? Maybe there's a pickup center of sorts if you're Lazada, so if it's easier for the customer, or would they prefer that? Especially if you order products that are somewhat delicate or sensitive, so it might break easily. So, those are different things that you have to consider if you're thinking of providing customers an alternative here. And as I mentioned here, will it be enough to entice those customers to divert sales from Amazon to Walmart or to Target? Now, obviously, they have to provide deep discounts so that they can drive up demand here. Now, obviously, the service of providing, curbside pickup is one thing, but, at the end of the day, consumers here who are buying, who are price conscious are looking for, significant discount here. Now, if it's a big discount, then, it doesn't matter whether it's online or through curbside pickup, people would still buy, right? If it's $10, $100, $1,000, if the saving is significant enough, I think it would be enough for people to switch to a different seller, in this case, different platform. And what Amazon, I think the Amazon Prime Day started on Tuesday and lasted through Wednesday. Then Target, also they call this a deal days, while Best Buy has this Jumpstart Black Friday sales. Then Walmart has this Big Save event. So they have their different strategies, their different names, but the point of the matter is to provide discounts and different services or offerings for customers so that when they purchase products online, they can easily access those items. But there's a big but. Now, obviously, offering this alternative method, apart from delivering to your doorstep, is the key point here is to shortening the time. But the problem here is if a majority of customers would prefer to pick it up, pick up at store or curbside pickup, won't that create a long queue, especially if you visit the store? So it would be the same as if you bought the items in store and you have to fall in line to pay for the item. So there has to be a trade-off. How can you be more efficient? So I think that's something that they have to consider, especially if they're Walmart. At the end of the day, Amazon can just sit back and relax and know that, if customers are looking for a good deal and they can provide it, they can. I think they have the same day shipping. I think they're offering, and I think in the near future with drone technology, they could also deliver within the hour on the time of their purchase. So I think that's a key competitive advantage that Amazon is betting on versus the other retailers here. So the question is, will it be enough for customers to buy their products? Now, obviously, the surge in sales has been staggering. So if you compare this to Target, so their curbside pickup service and drive up service has surged more than 700%. Now, will this continue come, let's say, next year? Who knows? And their order pickup has already grew by more than 60%, which is, a significant amount given the situation. So it's not just Target. We also have Best Buy here, where their online revenue rose by as much as 250%. Okay. Then you also have, as mentioned, curbside pickup has many advantages. It eliminates the need for shipping package. Obviously, this is tremendous if you're the business here. You don't have to spend on the cost of the logistic aspects. But again, making sure the short turnaround time from the time the customer orders to the time that you would receive it when they do decide when to pick it up is readily available, because some of the concerns here is maybe the item is not available in the warehouse, so they have to wait still. So it's the same process like if they just purchase online through Amazon and then get it delivered through their doorstep. So they mentioned here that the order pickup service is 90% cheaper, cheaper than shipping from a warehouse. Now, obviously, it's a big savings for many businesses here, but you have to strike a balance in terms of how you offer your services. You need to have a big plethora of people, technology, and so forth to be able to accommodate the tens of thousands or even millions of customers that are buying your products here. And obviously here, as I mentioned, the challenge is in the logistics. So, apart from the benefits of the reduced cost, but if you're Amazon here, who's in the e-commerce, they still have to manage their inventory. So how well can they manage their inventory will dictate how profitable can they be, and will this be a long-lasting business model that they can implement, or is it just a short-term strategy that they're implementing? Obviously, Amazon can just, sit back and relax, and they've already invested so much in their technologies, in their logistics, in their ecosystem, so that it tends to benefit them more rather than be as a disadvantage here. Anyway, so continuing, so going to the tech industry now. So for some updates, now we've been talking about the issue that is the tech giants, as I mentioned earlier, Amazon, Apple, you have Facebook, Google, those big monopolies in their respective industries. Now, obviously, we've been hearing a lot from Apple with regards to one major publisher, which is Epic Games, who is suing the company for unfair practices, for charging them for as much as 30% fee, which is they're contesting, is it beneficial to their customers? And their main game, popular game, which is Fortnite, got kicked out or banned in the Apple App Store. Now, there's a recent report, according to a judge. Let's take a look here. So it says here that the judge is permanently restraining Apple from blocking Unreal Engine, but it won't force Fortnite. So meaning, Fortnite game will still not be available in Apple Store, but the Unreal Engine, which powers Fortnite and other games in Apple, in the iOS system, will still be allowed, to continue. And obviously, the concerns here, not just for Epic Games here, but other developers who uses the Unreal Engine to power their games would be at a risk here. And obviously, Apple is not too glad or too happy of what Epic just did, and they could just simply, found a way to retaliate. In this case, which what we're doing in the first place is to block access to their Unreal Engine for updates, so that users cannot use it anymore, and this would have a tremendous effect on their bottom line in terms of generating revenues here. And it was stated here, according to the judge, Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers, so stated that refused to grant Epic Games a preliminary injunction against Apple that would force the game developers to reinstate the Fortnite game. So meaning the game Fortnite is still back. That's That's the only reasoning behind it. But on the other hand, it granted injunction in terms of keeping Apple from retaliating, keyword is retaliate, against the Unreal Engine, which Epic owns. And it's not just Epic who owns the Unreal Engine. Other developers are using Unreal Engine as a platform to create games and entertainment. And as I mentioned here, the ongoing battle between the two companies is still ongoing. At least it's a win scenario. You want to call it a win scenario for Epic for saving the Unreal Engine, meaning being not affected in a sense. So the issue of the matter here is when Epic decided to remove the in-app payment, which is requiring their customers to pay a percentage, not just to Epic but to Apple every time they purchase something online. Now, obviously, Fortnite has a online game that you want to upgrade stuff or buy skins or aesthetics. You purchase with their currency by using actual money. So obviously, it generates tens of hundreds or even billions of dollars here. So obviously, Epic wants to have all the revenues here, not share it with other companies. But obviously, Apple, who has the platform here, gets to dictate the terms here. And it's not also stated that, according to the judge, it stated that Epic Games and Apple are at liberty to litigate the action. So we still have to wait and see in the future what will be the final decision. Will it be in favor of Epic Games or will it be in favor of Apple, stating that, for any future developers, you pay 30% is reasonable. Or on the other hand, if you're Epic Games, if it's in favor to them, that any future developers, can contest to Apple and say, we don't want to pay the fee. We just want to use your platform and we should be allowed to use the platform without any repercussion here. So we still have to wait and see how that goes here. And it all goes down to the antitrust issue with Apple here, which goes back several years because as Apple grew several years to decades now, their ecosystem is growing not just from the software component but as well as in the hardware component. And they're not just streaming from computers to laptops to desktops to tablets to iPhones. You have headphones. So they have a plethora of products and services they're offering, and they want to consolidate that and obviously take advantage of the market as well. And obviously it's difficult for other businesses to compete with them. And is that considered fair? Obviously, it's their prerogative to capitalize on their strengths, but at the end of the day, does this benefit the consumers as well? Obviously, if consumers are left with no choice, like for example, they're unable to play Fortnite, they can just shift to a different platform, in this case, go to Android device or maybe play on a desktop and so forth, or other consoles so that they can play their favorite games. Now, will this have a significant impact? Maybe not, because Apple has other streams of revenue that they rely upon. So, question is, will this help us in the long run in terms of the other developers? Obviously, they are waiting to see what will be the turnout here. And obviously, if you're a consumer here, you should be concerned here. Not just, how this turn out, how will this affect the customer experience of, should I be buying more Apple products in the future, or maybe I should consider looking for another brand in the end. And Yes, I got cut off again. Anyway, so continue with our next story. So for some local news, so many schools have already resumed or started their semesters. For others, they're going to open either later this month or in the near future. Question here is, are they ready or prepared for the online classes that's going to be implemented currently and in the near future, hopefully? Now, for the public education or public institution or public education system in particular, what will happen to them? Obviously, they're not as privileged as the private education system. So the DepEd or the Department of Education is partnering with a cable company, in particular SkyCable, to create a TV station or TV channel, sorry, to implement the distance learning for schools amid the pandemic. So this would be applied in different divisions, in particular from Baguio, Lawag, Cebu, Iloilo, Davao, and let's see here. I think there's the other areas here. Yeah, it mentions, so as mentioned earlier, it's Baguio, Lawag, Cebu, Davao, General Santos, Zamboanga. So they would air shows by DepEd TV on cable, which is good, great news in a sense. It's one thing to provide education through cable, but before the pandemic, our government is already having a difficult time providing actual what do you call this, services that is adequate for our students in their respective schools, right? So with technology incorporated here, can people afford to watch cable TVs? Or do they even have TVs? If it's just regular TV station or free channel, I think that's something that students can benefit, but not everyone is afforded to have a television at home. Let's assume they have their own television set at home. Do they have access? Can they afford to pay for cable TV, which is a additional cost altogether? And if you're in the provincial area, I think access is a major problem here, and if you need internet access, I don't know if families could afford to pay as such. And the question here is, who will provide the content here? So will the DepEd provide instructional classes here that will be implemented nationwide here, so that lessons could be transmitted to the different students attending the online class? And the fact that online is the key word here, how can students afford to go online if they don't have the money to pay for internet access? Unless the schools provide it, which is, since they cannot go to schools, so how can they reach to the different houses, in the entire country? Unless we have 5G technology readily available for everyone to access here, which is, we're a long ways to go from there. And there's a separate agreement here. It stated that SkyCable has also signed an agreement with DepEd to provide fiber internet connections in the 32 priority schools, which is great if you think about it. But the problem here is it connecting just the schools, meaning the students have to be in the schools to be able to access the internet, to be able to watch those television shows? But the problem here is, you're trying to social distance from one another, so it may not be practical. And does this mean that you're going to create a Wi-Fi connections of sorts, so that students in a particular region, province, or barangay can simultaneously share their internet connection? If that was the case, I think that would be more feasible and more reasonable for our students here, so that the fact they have to have their own phones is one thing, but we're asking too much here. But we have to see how this goes and if it would be implemented effectively here. Continuing, so as mentioned, so we were just talking earlier regarding the Amazon's Prime Day, right? So e-commerce platforms are reaping the benefits during the pandemic. Obviously, people's preferences to purchase items, they stuck at home, so they buy online and get it delivered to your doorstep, which is great, right? Here in our country, so you only have a few platforms here. So Amazon is not that popular here. So you only have Lazada, Shopee, I think you have Zalora as well. and I think eBay is another, and so forth, right? So obviously sales has been driven up, which they've reaped tremendously, but there's always a downside to every business that you provide here. And one such problem that customers have been pining is complaining regarding the surge of consumer complaint. So why would you think would consumers? I also is considered a consumer, and I have purchased items online through those different platforms and have encountered the same problems. And I'm sure majority have encountered the same problem. And what can be done with this scenario here? So, as mentioned here, consumer complaints to the DTR, the Department of Trade, has surged significantly during the height of the lockdown here. What do you mean? So this pertains to whether both online and offline purchases. Okay, so it mentions that they have received 45,000 complaints, significantly higher from a year before, which is just 10,000. So that's almost 4 or 5 times significantly higher. Now, obviously, with the current situation, obviously more people are stuck, and they have no choice but to purchase online here. And the complaints revolve around key particular issues here. So the number one mentioned they stated is, the complaint they received or they stated is the deceptive sales, okay, as well as defective products, and then unreasonable prices and the poor customer service. And obviously the deceptive sales practices, I think, whatever is stated in the advertisement or in the page stating that you're paying for so and so items, and then you receive nothing in return, or you get a different product altogether, which is not something you're, what do you call this? That's something what you're looking forward. And I think one of the examples that I saw is, it's in the picture. It stated that there are two items that are sold. So you saw the picture. There are two items there that you assume that you're buying two, but by the time you see the item, it's only one item. So that's kind of misleading. I think another one is a lighting. It's a hexagonal lighting. But in the picture they post, it's like 16 pieces. But when you purchase the item and you receive it, you only receive one piece of the item. So that's somewhat misleading. And I think you need to rectify this, not just the seller, but also the platform itself who provides those services. And they need to keep track of those. So when in terms of defect, I think this is commonplace. Now, obviously, whether through by accident or actual default from manufacturer's default, how are they dealt with? But typically, based on my experience and from others, if you pay a substantial amount, you expect a return policy. But in our case, that's not the case here. So if you bought defective items, what are we supposed to do? Do we just throw the money and learn our lesson here? That's why sometimes reviews can be deceiving also, right? They could inflate the reviews and say this is a good product, but again, deceptive sales practices is a key reason here. And not just that, and when you talk of unreasonable prices, as mentioned, obviously taking advantage of the pandemic, so they can jack up the prices. And if sellers collude in terms of how pricing should be, then I think government should step in, and the platform itself, whether you're Lazada or Shopee, should be able to control the platform, because you're the one dictating the terms, and you should be able to manage it properly, especially at the interest of your customers, right? And finally, given all of those, obviously you will get poor customer service, meaning they don't deal with your customers. There's no feedback. There's no way to air your concerns, and there's no actionable change that would improve the service here. So why would I buy in your store if I encountered a poor service from your people, right? Or there's no people to begin with, right? And according to Lazada Philippines here, they are stating that the online platform, the sellers on the online platform should share the liability risk to deter scams. Now, that's good all in all, but I think at the end of the day, whether you're Lazada or Shopee, whether you're Amazon, I think you have you have this big business that you have here. I think you have the capability to keep track of the preferences of your customers. I think you should be able to keep track of your sellers as well, so that you avoid these deceptive sales practices and selling misinformed products or selling counterfeit products at that and so forth, right? So at least it provide not just a perception, but people would know that your products online can be trusted, and people would buy more in general. I think it's a win-win if they are able to address those scenarios here. Well, hopefully. Anyway, so next we have here is, so I think with the lockdown, the pandemic has stopped a lot of productions here or operations here. In particular is the SKYWAY operation that is soon to be finished later this year, that will connect the North Luzon Expressway or the South and the South Luzon Expressway. So the NLEX and the SLEX will be connected soon enough, which is great news, right? So let's take a look here. So obviously the goal here of the project is to connect both expressways, linking the south to the north easily, right? It used to be that if you're going to traverse, you have to go through the heart of the city, go to EDSA, and take you hours, right? Assuming it's regular time. If you want to get from one side to the other in less than an hour, maybe early morning, late evenings, maybe that's not even a given, right? But the advantage here is once they have finished construction, which is supposed to be later this year by December, was planned supposed to be early this year. It was mentioned that it was supposed to be finished by April the 1st, but there was a fire that was raised nearby the warehouse in Pandacan, which caused a section of the SKYWAY Stage 3 to collapse. Now, I don't know you heard of that fire. I live a few miles away from Pandacan area, and we were able to see the black smoke that arise from that scenario or incident. And obviously that delayed the construction, and obviously with the pandemic, it halted the resumption of the construction here. But once it's finished, they're going to connect from Makati Buendia to Quezon City, Balintawak, and your travel time will be reduced significantly by as much as 20 minutes only. So from 1 to 2 hours, that would be a big savings in terms of if you have a business that you're transporting, especially in logistics, you need to traverse the city, it would save on time. But the question is, how much toll are they going to charge? Is it going to be an absorbent amount, hundreds or even thousands of pesos just to traverse the entire section? And obviously, it's a case-to-case basis depending on the business, especially if you're personal, you need to travel the entire sector, you want to save on time, you pay the price, things like that. And for those who are not familiar, it's an elevated expressway, right? It's roughly around 19 kilometers in distance. So the project cost almost 45 billion. So it's not cheap, right? I think last time I passed by in, what was it? In Santa Mesa. Yeah, I think near Shaw. I saw the SKYWAY portion there, it's already done. So it's looking differently now compared to years back. And finally, for our last story, so before we conclude, now for those who are not familiar, now apart from the Amazon Prime Day that happened recently in the United States, now if you're an Apple loyal customer, you should be informed that the latest flagship iPhone 12 has been recently released. So if you're looking to upgrade your phone, if you have reasons to upgrade, I think there are compelling reasons, and we'll take a look if it's compelling reason enough for you, especially if you're a Android user. Should you even consider switching to an iPhone device and so forth? So let's take a look here. And with their launch, they've saved the best for last. So in terms of the iPhone 12, it has several lineups from the smallest to the biggest, and not much big. There's no much bigger than the iPhone 12 Pro Max, right? And in terms of the article states here that the biggest jump in terms of camera features or what it provides would be a compelling enough reason for many Apple consumers to, I would switch to a new iPhone here. So their main improvements is across the board. So meaning not just the chipsets here or the processor, but the camera. It's obviously, if you have a phone, it used to be it's just for communicating to people, but larger screen is always better. Then refresh rate is that important. The smoothness of transitioning from one screen to another. Obviously, the interface is a key component, but now obviously with social media, with everything, the selfie, taking pictures with selfie, and also taking pictures, not just in regular circumstances, but during daytime or in nighttime and so forth. All of these. So combining the different features of, let's say, a regular DSLR, jam-packed into a mobile phone. Is it enough for you to shell out $1,100, $1,200? So that's 50, 60, 70, even 80,000 here in our country. So is it worth your money? Yeah, you could consider that. Now, obviously, the hardware-wise is not much different with the other lineup. So from their iPhone 12, you also have the iPhone 12 mini and the iPhone 12 Pro. So they all have the same, same hardware, but with the difference in terms of their features. Okay, so they all have the same 12 megapixel sensor. The other one has ultra wide. The Pro has a telephoto camera. So again, it's geared towards to taking pictures. So if you like taking photos, I think this is the phone for you. And they're also boasting this. They call this the new 711. It's an f1.6 stop lens. So it has a wide camera angle, and also it can capture more light in low light setting. So meaning, even in dark areas or not well lit areas, you can still capture great photos here. So if photo is your primary concern here, I think Apple has covered you here as well. So they're stating that the ISO setting in low light, it gathers 25% much better compared to the iPhone 11 here. So it's an improvement here. So as mentioned, the software here, we're talking of the A14 Bionic processor. So they make significant improvement here. So in terms of using smart HDR3, computational photography pipeline. So meaning in terms of taking pictures and what you see as the end product, they would enhance it with the use of AI and such. So they're claiming that there's improved performance as well as in night mode. So you can use it in ultra wide as well as selfie camera as well. So is it enough for you to buy their product here now? Obviously, their price point is a big hurdle for many users, but if you're a Apple loyal product user, then I think that's something you would consider. But is it time to upgrade your old phone if you're using a different platform? Then, it's still a big hurdle here because the ecosystem of Apple versus Android is totally different here. But for me, I'm still an Android user, so it's a case-to-case basis. So it may apply to me, may not apply to you, and so forth here. Anyway, so this concludes our discussion for today's live stream. So if you have a question, you can leave your comments down below. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell icon so you can stay updated with the latest videos as well as news. Also, hit the like button if you enjoyed the live stream. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. Take care.